Well, it's a collection of short stories published by Black Lawrence Press and Zank Books. The stories are pretty eclectic in their subject matter. The one thing that kind of binds them together is that they're sort of about what it's like to get lost in kind of the vortex of yourself. So a lot of them are heavily internal, some of them are first-person narrators. And I guess another thing that binds them together is a lot of them are very, are kind of dark stories. I guess you could even call them gothic, some of them. I don't know, I've been influenced by a lot of authors, I think, over the course of my career, as it were. Certainly some of my earliest inspirations were, you know, Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, and then later on people like Flannery O'Connor. And then more recently I've been into a lot of sort of experimental fiction, some writers like Brian Evenson, Lydia Davis, who are sort of more in the contemporary experimental vein of things. Since I have left BB&N, well, I've been doing quite a bit. Not quite as much as when I was here, as you can imagine, but I took sort of the semester to teach at BC and BU, and I was teaching 2 sections of comp at both of those schools, which is actually quite a bit of work because it's, you know, it's basically like being a therapist to freshmen in their first year of college. But yeah, and that was a rewarding experience. It was certainly easy for me to do while I was working on the edits for the collection and revising another novel that I wrote. But yeah, and I've also been preparing to move to New Orleans with my wife Darcy. Plans for the future. Well, first of all, me and my wife are due for a move, as I said, to New Orleans. I have currently this novel that I wrote, which is about spirit photography, which I believe I talked about in our Southern Literature class, which is a kind of 19th century hucksterism where, you know, they would, the photographer would superimpose images of people that the sitters had lost during the Civil War over portraits of them and then charge them exorbitant amounts for the pleasure. So I wrote a novel about spirit photography, and it's now, you know, under contract with an agent in the area and should be published in the next year or so. So those are my writing plans. The idea, though, is to move to New Orleans, where my wife has a job, and she's going to keep me in minks while I sit around in my pajamas and eat bonbons and imagine things all day. So that's the idea. I do. Probably, like, you know, the academic semester system dictating, I will not be teaching in the spring because I'm going to be moving to New Orleans at an awkward time. But I will probably begin teaching again in the fall, provided that I can find a gig somewhere at a high school or college. My favorite part of BB&N, I can say without question, were the students. And I really kind of retained a fondness for a lot of the students who I had in a lot of my classes, really memorable kids, and honestly, a lot of the time, I would say 75% of them actually seemed like they wanted to be there, which is kind of incredible when it comes to being a teacher, because, you know, often you're in a situation where the kids actually don't want to be there, but I never felt that that was the case at BB&N. In particular when it comes to English, I thought it was really strong. You can find the book on the website of the publisher, which is Black Lawrence Press. You can also find it on the website Zank Books. You can also find it at Barnes & Noble. You can find it at Amazon. Really anywhere that you can buy books, you should be able to buy it, either electronically or, you know, in hard copy form. The story is called albino deer. He was 19 years old and 6 foot 3 inches. His skin was the bronze shade of watercourse piping. He wore a black leather vest piece with fringe on the bottom, after the fashion of hair metal frontmen, and his waist-length black hair he tied up in a ponytail or on dressier days in 2 thick braids. His grandmother was full Cherokee, a fact that he flaunted to girls and older men, and to heighten the fact, liked to carry himself with an air of aggrieved nobility. He'd successfully avoided all his life a comprehensive study of the way of his ancestors, and had cobbled up a notion of who he should be from the hearsay of ignorant whites. For him it was a point of pride that Cherokee men withstood their whiskey, laid their lives' plans by the span of the moon, tracked every meal they hoped to eat in a hand-me-down pair of rawhide chaps, the shards of obsidian in their boots, the only acceptable means of bloodletting. If corrected, he would say he'd co-opted these notions to give his enemies a taste, as if feeding a man with his own fool misconceptions were a surefire way to make him learn. His name was William Henry Shaw, a curious one for a half-breed, he thought, though in truth he was only a quarter. He had graduated high school with very few prospects, and at his father's urging had taken a job at the general store in town. The store was open 23 hours a day. William came on at 8 in the morning to help his boss Singleton scrub down the grill that they used to fry up eggs and meat. The store would reopen for business at 9. William sat there on an old wooden stool whose seat, all these years beneath Singleton's ass, had molded to the shape of it. He greeted that daily ebb and flow. He counted out the register. He sectioned invoices by date and delivery and attacked, like a maniac wielding a nail gun, whole shipments of freezer-stiff goods with his labeler. He serviced the antique popcorn machine that Singleton warned him would jam and catch fire the moment William had his back turned. It had once, he said, in a vicious blaze, and the store had shut down for a week. He'd suffered losses. If William was going to lift a finger, that it might as well be to protect his own skin. For not only would he be sacked if the store went up on William's watch, but William might well lose his life. So the better to suffer some burns on his knuckles than be both dead and jobless. Walking home after work to the one-story house that he shared with his father, a whiny old roofer, William watched the traffic pass. Greyhound buses moaning through, muscle cars with drunken captains, the tragic hatchbacks of the other night people, waitresses, watchmen, janitors, William. Sometimes pickups, jeeps, and vans with figureheads of bloody meat, deer and moose and even foxes lashed to the trunk of the roof. He envisioned confrontations with the passengers, all. There would be an event that would draw them together. And William, throughout the course of this, would be in the right no matter his role. Home at night he beat his pillow in sweaty pantomimes of vengeance, more gratified than he knew he should be when a split opened up in the seam and leaked feathers. It was 3 months of this, 12 hours at a stretch, before he met the 3 white men from the logging camp, Jameson, Fox, and McNeil.